I'm just having 10 minutes round back of this caravan. Once again, an amazing hot sunny day, which is brilliant for when you're growing your vegetables. But not everybody has the advantage of having full sun in the garden all day long. So what we'll go over today is vegetables that are quite happy to grow in the shade or semi-shade. So instead of getting 8 to 10 hours of sunlight a day, they could only get 3 to 4, but yet you'll still get an harvest from certain plants. So if you've got a bit of a shady part in your garden, then this video is going to be helpful to you. We know that when it comes to growing onions, onions like full sun, and that's so that they can get all the energy from that sun into that bulb to help it bulb up. So if you're growing regular onions like white or red or yellow onions in a shady area, they're not going to do so well. You'll probably get some onions from it, but they will be a lot smaller than you were hoping for. But as you'll probably know, and you've seen before multiple times, we grow these spring onions, and we grow these for the green tops. Cut them off, as we have done not too long ago, and then, if you can tell, some have completely grown back while others are just on the way. So they will regrow, and you can get these really tasty green onion tops, and you can use it or this 2 to 3 times from a little container like that. Even if you leave this in an area where it doesn't get full sun all day, they will still grow like that, because these have been growing right back of this van. And usually by afternoon every day we lose all sunlight from this area, but yet they're still grown back ready for another harvest. And then if you just leave them, because you're only going to get little spring onion bulbs, they will still then produce bulbs as well, just as long as you don't cut these tops away too many times. I say do it twice, and then if you want to get some decent sized spring onion bulbs, I would leave it to grow on at that. But that is your first one that you can grow in a garden that doesn't get full sun all day. This part of the garden, which also gets shade through day, this is the side of the van, so the sun goes around and then it's on the front of this van all day long. This then becomes a bit shady, but yet we're still growing things in this area. And there's a pretty good reason for that, because one of the most notorious vegetable plants for bolting when they get full sun is spinach. And we had quite a lot of spinach growing at the front of this van. But as soon as we got this weather coming, it all bolted, because it can't tolerate heat and direct sunlight for more than just a few hours a day. So to grow spinach in a shady area is perfect. You'll get harvests for a lot longer. This is a container that we did, and we popped it at the front of that van to get it to germinate. Unfortunately, once it did germinate, we didn't move it. And if you take a closer look, this has all now gone to seed. It's trying to produce little flowers. So this spinach is now no good. If we'd have left it around the back of that van, by now we would have had a full container of spinach leaves to harvest. So spinach is another really good one to grow in a shady garden. And so is radish. We keep moving this from one area to another, and we only want to harvest greens, and I think it's pretty much ready for that now. We've got some amazing growth on this little container. Once again, a Caravan wash bowl. Very small amount of compost, but a really good amount of harvest. You can grow these in a shady area. They'll grow a lot slower, as will most plants, but you will still get something. And these will now be going right back of this van, so that they don't get too much heat, because it's not showing any signs of getting any cooler over the next few days. Although I am definitely going to be taking an harvest of that, and then we'll see if we can get it to grow back again. We overseed to get leaves, so if you put less seeds in, they will then grow on and produce bulbs for you. But another good one to grow in a shady spot. One that's probably not as obvious is potatoes. You're really supposed to grow those in full sun, but if you haven't got the option of doing that, they will still grow in a shady area. And if you've been following videos over the last few weeks, you'll remember we took an harvest from one of these containers, a rocket first early potato just to see how well they were growing, and it was a very big potato, and we grew those in little 2-litre pots, and the plants was only 6 to 8 inches, and then we transplanted them into big containers. But that was only about 8 weeks ago, and rocket usually take 12 to 14 to mature. So considering that 8 weeks on we took a really big sized potato out one of these containers, just proves that even in an area where it doesn't get full sun continuously all day, doesn't mean you can't grow potatoes. And that's a couple of containers that we've got our potatoes in. They're going to start and get a little bit tired over the next few weeks, but the potatoes below will still be growing. But by this afternoon, this area will be in shade, and they're still doing really well. And I've got another one there, and this particular one is not looking as good as the others because the plant's starting to get tired now. As you can see, some of the leaves are dying back, so I'm going to wait until it's died back a little bit more, and then we'll empty one and see what we get from it. Another one that people might find surprising are these. They're dwarf French beans. They're not in a huge container, so we basically just put a couple of plants in there and left them to grow, and they've certainly done that. And if we look inside this container, we can see that we've already got beans trying to grow. The plant itself just looks amazing, but if you put that in an area where it doesn't get full sun all day, it will still grow and produce beans. This one is growing quite well because it's at the front of this van, so obviously it's getting more sun and more warmth, so it's growing a lot quicker. But if you want to grow some dwarf French beans, but that part of your garden doesn't get full sun all day long, doesn't mean you can't get a really good harvest even from a small container like that. You've probably seen this before in that obelisk behind me. They're alderman peas, and you think peas have to be grown in a really sunny spot, but they don't. We just choose to put them at the front. But the truth is, peas don't like it too hot. They're not very tolerant of really hot temperatures, so they're perfect to grow in a shady spot. We've got them in a container growing up an obelisk. If it does get too hot, we have got the option of moving that once again round the back of that van, just to offer it a little bit of shade through the day. And you can see, if we go closer to that plant, we've certainly got lots of peas growing. And you can see the little peas inside now trying to form. We hold that in the sun. So we've definitely got peas, haven't we? So if you've got an area garden that gets 3 to 4 hours of sun a day, and that's about all, it will still produce peas for you. This is another plant, although you might think a little unlikely to grow in an area of your garden that doesn't get full sun all day. But you can actually do that. That's a bush tomato plant. So not a full-size vining plant. You can easily grow them in little containers like that. This one is called a tumbling tom. So you could grow that in a container or a basket. And they grow quite well. They're determinate plants, so that means that they're going to grow flower, fruit, and then they're finished. But even if your garden once again doesn't get full sun all day long, doesn't mean that you can't grow yourself a few containers of cherry tomatoes like this. As with everything on this list, they will grow, they'll just grow that little bit slower. So obviously, based on that, the harvest that you take is not going to be as big, but you will get something, and probably a lot more than you'd think. It doesn't, however, work for full-size tomato plants or cucumbers. They really need that full sun all day. But a couple of baskets or a couple of containers of dwarf cherry tomatoes is perfectly fine to do in an area that doesn't get full sun all day long. This is one that I do by choice. That is a cauliflower plant, and the rules do state that they need full sun to mature into a cauliflower, but I find that in this country, being UK, the weather's not consistent, so you'll get a cool day with lots of rain, and then you'll get dry days that are really hot and that's what causes cauliflowers to bolt. So I choose to grow these cauliflowers in containers at the back of this van. I've more chance of this plant reaching maturity if I do that and not going to seed. So that's what we're doing this year, because normally when we grow them in an open garden, they just get to that point where they start forming that amazing white cauliflower head, and then it'll start to split open, and then that plant's no good. So we're doing something different this year. We've got a couple behind here, and they just stay here all day long. This area behind here has been in sun for a couple of hours, but over the next couple of hours it will shift and there'll be nothing round here at all, yet they're still growing perfectly fine. Another one that can bolt if it gets too hot is basil, and we always seem to struggle with basil, and it's because we always grow it in an area that gets too much sun. So I'm going to redo some seeds as we are with the spinach that's now bolted, and we're going to put them round back here, and we're just going to leave them here. It's easier when you're growing plants to germinate them indoors and then transplant and move, because at least that way you're starting off with an already established plant instead of direct sowing seeds. That's just going to take a little bit longer, and with the length of season that we get, it's better to get them done as quick as possible. So that's what we're going to do. We'll sow some basil seeds, we'll sow some spinach seeds, and we'll just put them in this shady area. We have got another shady area at the other side of the van as well, which I think is the one that gets shade most of the day. So we'll try some spinach and some herbs and things like that over there and see how they get on. You can see behind me that we've got a couple of planters, and they're full of vegetable plants that are doing really well. There is, however, something in there that grows just as well in a shady area, and that's lettuce, or any type of lettuce leaf. The leaves on these plants are quite tender, so if they get blasted with full sun all day long, that's going to cause them to start wilting, and you don't want that. Also, the soil is going to dry out a lot quicker, and considering that lettuce is made up of 99% water, we don't want to put them in an area where they're constantly blasted by sun, unless, like me, you're doing it to take small harvest but regular. We've got a couple of plants in this container that you'll have seen before, but you'll also notice we've quite densely planted out this container, so there's certain things that's overshadowing others. So these little lettuces there, which are called Little Gem, are starting to art up, and round about that size we'd take them. There's one there that's completely covered by beetroot leaves, but it's still quite happily growing away, and that is definitely ready to take. So if you want to grow lettuce and take small harvests, there's nothing wrong with growing them in a full sun area. But lettuce can go to seed, just like anything else. So if it's consistently hot, you're better off putting them in an area of your garden where it does get shade for some part of the day. We've got another one just there, which is definitely ready to take. So a quick twist, and we've got an amazing little lettuce there, and that's one that's obviously been grown in full sun. And as I said, we only do that to take early harvests. So definitely more things than you would have thought that'll grow quite happily in an area that doesn't get full sun all day. But just bear in mind, they will grow that little bit slower, which is the reason I think it's best to start them off from seed indoors, and once they're established little plugs, then transplant them, and they've already got an head start. While leaving things like peppers, full-size tomato plants, courgettes and cucumbers in an area that gets full sun, because they definitely need it. So if you have got a shady spot in your garden, don't dismiss it, use it for some of the plants that we've just spoke about. Before you know it, you'll be taking harvests from areas you never thought you'd be able to. If you want to see what else we're going to be doing throughout the rest of this week, please hit that subscribe button, press that notifications bell, and I'll see you next time. Take care.